adopted. 40 states are using open data. A lot of the counties and a lot of cities are counties. So that's why that is combined. So you have Boston and Chicago and San Francisco and other major cities who are, and Austin is also a very big leader as a city. And so there's this element of transformation that's taking place around us, if you will, that is pretty fascinating. So what is that? How does that translate into, for us? And we'll go through this. And again, we're just trying to start the conversation here. And it is always about, as you know, executive sponsorship. And so we're, looking and seeking to have some executive sponsorship and leadership in this region. And then to what would be an open data project? What would that look like? And you obviously start with an inquiry, and you start with identifying team members both within the IT staff of the government, and then also partners and alliances outside of the government, and then you establish a feasibility study of what that might look like, and establish set a strategy and set a goal or a plan, and establish some milestones and some values. Values like, again, transparency creates accountability. That would be maybe a value that you could have. A goal might be that government as a platform, so that the government, the county government, could be a platform that could be accessed and made available for technologists to leverage and enhance and repurpose. So there's a tremendous amount of possibility here, right? And there's and so one of the things, and part of that journey, if you will, is soon after that feasibility study occurs, then one of the first things that they do is that they work to strive and create data sets. It might be around industry, it might be around public education, or it might be around healthcare. Those are the two. It might be around public safety. Depending on the makeup or the thinking or the priorities of the community. Okay, and so you create those data sets, and then you make those data sets available to technologists, and you invite them to a code fest or hackathon, or some concentrated time where people come together, and that data is made available to them. And then teams are created, and there's a whole buzz that goes on, and a whole set of efforts that of this collaboration. And there's ground rules set to this, and of course, but the outcome of that, it could be a competition. It could be there could be entrepreneurs that get inspired to embrace a certain idea, and then invest in that idea and begin to develop that idea further, and you have the makings of an application or a company that could build itself around that application or that offering. You have type of another element of the strategy that Maggie Miller has is to create this intense alliance between industry of the region and what they can do to bring about in partnership with government to enhance that industry, right? So the hospitals of this area, or the clinics, or there's so many different realms of possibility here, right? So it's making those things available. And I'll give you one example, and just as this takes a step back, and there's maybe current news that you've heard recently, or you've read recently. The rats in New York City, the few things went viral, right? Well, they had a rat problem in Baltimore also, and then they decided, let's create a site. They have an open data. The guy who's running for president was governor at the time. He initiated an open data project in his state, and Baltimore became kind of got swept up in that. And so one of the things that came up is like, why don't we create an app that people could just, identify that they saw a rat and where that would be, right? Because the GPS is there, so it's on a mobile app, and so wherever they are, I saw one, and it's like, and then so they map it, right? And then so they gathered all this data, right? But then they also realized, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of rats down at the docks, but there aren't a lot of people. So there's a gap there, right, in the story that they're trying to accomplish. So how is it that they could still gather? And they started to realize that that by just creating a visual of of this map of Baltimore and the sightings of rats, right? What it did is it created it basically started a conversation, because nobody owns the problem. It wasn't a government program. It was like a rat program, led by Jack Nicholson. Anyway, so just that, but nobody owns the program, right? It crosses housing, it crosses public health, it crosses a bunch of different agencies, right? And government tends to operate within agencies, right? So here was now a problem, a real problem that was citywide, and nobody owned it, right? But then through open data, it created a conversation, and different agencies started having that conversation together, and then it created an opportunity for a solution, right? So a lot of times what goes on within open data in the innovations that take place is simply a conversation, right? It's simply an opportunity to have a conversation with someone, others, who have some type of affiliation with that problem or issue that you also are dealing with, right? But you've never talked with them. You talked about it also, how, depending on the product life cycle, whether you're talking to the professionals or the consumers, how they're not talking with one another, right? And now your tool enables that conversation to take place, right? So, technology oftentimes, as we all know, is an enabler, right? And so the reason why we're having this conversation tonight is more like, no, we're not hiring. Sorry, I don't have that message tonight, but it's more of like, there will be opportunities, right? In the future, you can count on it, because there will be a code fest that will take place somewhere within this. And one of the things that could take place, like for instance, in this type of region as a possibility, is more of a federated approach, where you might have various counties that would want to invest in this type of initiative, but no one county is going to carry that, right? Because we're not centralized, we're decentralized. We have multiple nodes. We have, New Paltz and Kingston and Poughkeepsie and Rhinebeck, and we're all over the Hudson Valley region. We are a region, right? And so you have this federated approach where there's a collaborative approach where you have each county can have their own repository, but then the source of that repository might be shared, right? So the cost of that repository. So those are the kinds of things that can start to happen. And all of that is possible by going about it in this collective and collaborative way. So ultimately what will take place, as you see further down, is that we would plan and establish the rules of engagement for a code fest, and then we would invite all of you, right? And then you can come, and we can have lots of fun together over a weekend. And I guess pizza and beer would be available. And then we would, see what would come out of that, right? But a lot of it would be derived out of the needs of the values, and again, the priorities and the vision and the plans of the drivers, of the executive sponsors, and of the cities and what their needs are, right? So that's a little bit about an introduction around open data. There's a tremendous amount of possibility here, and we're just starting that conversation. And thanks for listening. Yeah, that's good.
I'll take the.
Okay, good.
So it's time for questions and answers. So
Maybe you should take it.
guys can over here. Or in the mic over here. You guys can stand. We'll all stand.
Sometimes when that center of excellence they look at that we work for. Like the engagement we just started last week, they have a center of excellence that has different people assigned to different brand teams, and they are actually the stewards of that information. So they have to gather that information. They give it to us. It's usually filled with gaps, and we have to, you know, we've been doing it long enough that I can fill in. Not working. And I have to say, for anybody who's starting a business, that has been the key to our progress and success, is that we pull all of our folks together, we take them off site, we give them massages, not personally, we hire to do that, like at Mohawk. I know, qualifying. And we talk about things like this, like what we're gonna do with it and how we're gonna evolve it. And we haven't even done it for ourselves yet. But I mean, I would love to apply this to our efforts, you know, but I could see small businesses using it. I could see, obviously we use it on massive corporation, multi-billion-dollar corporations. So, and everything in between. So anyone who has ideas about it or thinks about an industry that they feel like would be useful, you know, I'm happy to work with them on that.
This question, Kirk?
Yes.
How free are people, are the sources of the data that we're talking about, say, New York, the counties? First, has the message gotten out to everybody about all the municipalities that have the data? Has it gotten out? I mean, if we go search for the data, are we going to find people that haven't been informed yet that they're supposed to be making this available?
Well, usually what takes place within an initiative like, say, New York City, is the agencies are then mandated to make, to prepare their data so that it can be made available to the public or made available in this repository. So there are standards. It has to be aggregated. It has to be, you know, you have HIPAA compliance, you know, with healthcare. So all that, depending on the agency, those rules and standards have to be applied. But there's a set of criteria that's established that, okay, we have an initiative, you have, you know, 6 months to get your data in this format, so that we will then port it to a repository, and then from there we will start this massaging and repurposing, and we will get back to you on how, you know, to be able to better serve you. And at the same time, while you're doing that, so to go back to your question, if you look at, say, Digital New York City, Digital NYC, okay, which is a site that's very similar to the site that, you know, that represents this organization here, right? It's the place that technical people go to, right? The third resource on that site is open data, and the alliances within that site are within that third thing that I was talking about. Is huge, right? It's massive. So, you know, by the way, 350 data sets, that's big. That's a lot. Those data sets, for those of you who do know, then you can, you know, look at your watch or something. But those who don't, it's basically a set of functions that sort of override and create, it's like a workflow, a set of workflows that establishes a major function within an organization, right? That's a use case. And so all the data that's associated with that major function is what's created. So New York City has 350, right? That's a significant accomplishment. And so technical analysis, data scientists, technical people could take the individual use cases and massage them or work with them and look at them and work with their peers and say, look at this, what can we do with this? And begin to work it. So going back to your question, is it available? Is it known? Yes, it's known because there's 150 applications available to everybody to use, right? Government is becoming more and more accessible. Now, I'll give you another example, though. In other ways, there's resistance. For instance, when de Blasio made his comments, and I hope I'm not going too long on the answer. When de Blasio, all right, maybe we get offline and I'll talk to you afterwards. Sorry.
Great. Other questions for anybody here? Tim, who are you question for?
I have a question for you, but I'm not remembering your name. Anthony, hi. Yeah, in terms of the kind of agile approach, I was interested in the zero. What were you?
Sprint Zero.
Sprint Zero. Could you just expand a little bit on this Sprint Zero session looks like?
Sure.
And what its results are supposed to be?
So yes, it's basically to communicate at what the goal of the project is, the various constituents involved with the project.
So let's bring together every stakeholder.
Every stakeholder. So in the IT world, if I'm doing a website, I have servers that need to be set up. I have databases that need to be set up. I have content management systems. I have designers. I have user experience professionals, and I have various other coders and developers that I need. So to do like a site like the Walkway, I had 15 people involved in that project. Some were just moving content from one place to another. But I also had the customers in that Sprint Zero meeting as well, and basically got opened up. So the customer knew who was working on their project, and the people involved in the project also knew what the expectations of the project were, and when the certain milestones would happen and everything like that. And that goes a long way to helping out all those other people, especially that server admin that he finds out 2 days before it's supposed to go live that he needs to spin up the server when he hasn't had that plan. That could really be a pain in the butt for them.
Do you show the Scrum Master at this point?
So yeah, we have a Scrum Master. We also have a product owner. Yeah. So my Scrum Master is the same Scrum Master in every project we do, and my product owner, and the product owner is the person who interfaces with the client. My product owner is the same product owner.
So at Sprint Zero, what's the Scrum Master's job?
Just to be there.
Mm-hmm.
The Scrum Master is just kind of like I would say a process manager, making sure that the team is following the process, and that's all he does. And he plays a little interference for the team as well. So the client can't come in and say, "Hey, I want this done right now." He's going to say, "No, we're going to pull that off for the next sprint." So.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Kevin, who's your question?
More questions for you. What is agile really mean? Where do you really see it in office?
What does it really mean
To you.
To me?
Like where you see it stuff.
To me, it means moving at a very quick pace in an efficient manner that produces results. And with that being said, it's a fail fast mentality. So what I expect of my team when we go into these Scrum processes is to step into it like I talked about. If it doesn't work, correct it as quick as possible. And to get to that result in a timely manner. So that can be pretty subjective, right? It can be pretty broad on what a timely manner is. It depends on the project. So I have to look at each project that we take on, and I have to set expectations of when I think certain things should be done. So you really have to kind of look at it in that way. No two projects, as many of you know, are they're not alike. No two projects are alike. There's always different players and different things involved. So you really have to just kind of take it from project to project. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and where do you actually, have you ever sat back and said, well, that was a real, manifestation that showed very agile?
Yeah. So with the Walkway project, there was several hundred, I want to say 500 or 600 pages in a very sloppy architecture on their current site. We managed to completely recode that site with an existing theme that they already have. We didn't actually redesign the site. That way we created a whole new site architecture, made the site responsive, and migrated all their content in 500 hours. So we started in June and we ended in just a few weeks ago and relaunched the site. So that was a manifestation of the Agile process. Really came together for that project. Awesome.
Other questions for any of our speakers? Anybody? Gail?
Also a question for Anthony. How do you help a client appreciate and manage client expectations around budgets and the idea of failure, such that, you know, something is going to happen and move forward, but that it might not work and that would have an impact on budget? Is there any way in which
Is
you...
something I should know, Ken?
Not yet. I'm hoping, though.
All right.
Anthony will help you with
We'll find out.
So that's the communication part of this. Hope not, right?
I don't know. Let's have tomorrow.
Whatever we fail, it'll be a fast failure, Zoe. Fast failure.
So that's I stay in constant communication with the client during these projects. It's not something like they hear from us at the end of the sprint in 2 weeks or something like that. We're constantly looking for feedback throughout the whole process. So a client will hear from me 3 or 4 times a week, and sometimes I'll get annoyed because I'm talking to them so much. But if you just keep that transparency, you kind of let them know what's going on ahead of time.
Utilities engage hackers all the time on a professional level to guard against that kind and to protect it. At the same time, the utility industry.
I'm not talking about a security issue. I'm just talking about usage
Yeah, I
and
understand.
customer usage.
But at the same time, if you look at the industry itself, it's a very good old boys kind of atmosphere, right? They're not innovators. They tend to be a little laggers in their adoption to technology. So, and I have been involved with utilities and doing data migrations and such for them, so I know the minefields that exist there pretty prevalent. And so I would venture to say that open data is not there, but I think we're talking about first of all, we're talking about an industry that's both private and locally owned. That's most of the 30% of the utilities are owned by the towns that they're in, right? And by the way, those utilities are often less expensive in terms of the rates that they charge their customers find out. But they're also private. Not many of them. Ours is internationally owned. And so you have to then cross that line with that. What are the values of that organization? Are they willing to go in that direction? And that's a whole other conversation. So I think the short answer to your question is no.
Great. So I think we have time for like one more question, maybe? I don't know. One more question. Anybody have another question for Zoe? I feel like we have Kirk.
No, that's fine.
It's fine. Another question for anybody else? All right. Thanks very much, everybody. And it's been an awesome HVAC meetup. Thank you. Oh, wait.
So normally you post the next date. We're talking about a holiday meetup though, so we don't have a next date. We're going to see you soon. We're going to be announcing something coming soon. So see you soon. Thank you very much. And anyone who wants to, across the street at Santa Fe, there is a bar and food, and those people can gather and talk more about open data and failing fast and being agile, or whatever you want.